Hello and welcome to Easy Piecy Quilts. I'm Juliah Tiedemann and today we're going to be making the quilt behind me called Country Heavens. It was named because I remember as a child going to my grandmother's house who lived out in the country. It was so dark without the street lights, you could look up into the night sky and see the stars so much more vibrantly. They were beautiful and I wanted to capture that in a quilt top. This quilt top comes in 4 sizes. There is a tabletop, there is a throw, a queen, and a king size. The quilt top behind me is made in more patriotic colors, which I love, but I also made one in florals and bright fun colors, and I think it looks really pretty that way too. So it's a very versatile quilt top that can be used anywhere from the top of your table to your bed. This quilt is fat quarter friendly, which makes it really nice to pick out fabrics, and I can't wait to start making Country Heavens with you. Here are the pieces of the corners of the block. We don't have several of the pieces in this block quite yet, but what I wanted to focus on were the 4 corners. They're essentially all the same. What we're going to do is we're going to put their 2 B pieces together for each section, and then we're going to attach the 2 B pieces to our A piece. So I chain pieced all of these B pieces together, and we'll open this up, we'll press toward the darker fabric, and then we will connect the B pieces to our A pieces, and we'll have all 4 corners of our block. All right, we've got our 4 corners of our block done. Now we're going to fill in these portions here. We are going to do a square and a square for this. So here is the center square, and then we are going to take 1 square of each color, 1 square of your center star fabric, and then 1 square from whatever fabric you use for the outside of the block. And we will take these 2 pieces and cut them from corner to corner. And the same with this one. And the measurements for all these pieces are in the pattern. So these are our D pieces, and this is our C piece. So I think the easiest way to do this is to fold your square in half and just make a little fold there on your fabric. And then I like to go the opposite direction. So in other words, I put the front of the fabric on the inside of the fold on this one. And then I'm going to put the inside or the front right part of the fabric on the outside for the fold for this one. And I'm going to find the center of the triangle by just folding it in half and making a little fold on the fabric. And then I can line these 2 folds up. And when I line those 2 folds up, I know that I have the center of the triangle, and the triangle is centered on our square. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other side here. And the fabrics, you're going to sew opposite fabrics on, or this fabric on this side, this fabric on the opposite side to start out with. So we'll do the same thing with this. So I'm going to sew this and this together, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what to do with the other triangles. Okay, I have our fabrics on opposite sides of the square. We're going to do the same thing for the other two sides. We're going to fold the square in half and make a little fold or crease on opposite sides, and then we're going to do the same thing to find the center of our triangles. And I I don't know if it really is true, or I just in my brain, but I feel like if you fold these fabrics opposite like we talked about, those little grooves just fit together, and it makes it a little bit easier to do it. But it's certainly just a way to find the center. So again, we're going to do opposite, and it doesn't matter. Your square is going to turn out exactly the same if you put these on the other side. So you don't have to worry about what side you're putting it on. As long as your color fabric is opposite each other on this, it will turn out just fine. So here we have our square and a square, and these pieces, I designed it to be a little bit big for the size we need. We need this to be 6.5 inches trimmed to go into this block. So it's very common ruler, 6.5 by 6.5 is a very common ruler. You can use just a regular ruler like this. I also have a fussy cut ruler set that I really like to use for this because it gives you the centers of the four sides, so you can line up the lines there with your block and trim around and make sure that you're at 6.5 inches, and it gives you the seam allowances along the edges too, so you know that you want your points inside that seam allowance. So that makes this ruler easy to use for trimming. But if you have a regular 6.5 by 6.5 inch ruler, that's easy too, because you know that your line for 3 1/4 should go through each side of the, or go through each point here on your square, because your block is 6.5, so 3 1/4 is going to be half of that. And as long as everything's lining up all the way around, you can just go ahead, and this is not, there's not going to be a lot to trim with this block, but at least you'll get your dog ears while you're doing this too, which makes it easy. And just trim around the outside there, and that will give you a nice 6.5 inch square with your points inside your seam allowances, so you'll have those, and all your dog ears are gone. So this is going to be around the centers of the four sides of your block. So let me make my other 3. You're going to make a total of 4 of these per block. So let me make my other 3 and we'll lay out our block. All right, so we have our corners done. We put the square center in the back of the block, and I have made our 4 square in a square sections, and you will start to see the magic of the star forming. So now, if you put your star fabric on the inside of the block and you put your outer fabric on the outside, you get your star. So from here, what we're going to do is we're just going to sew the 3 rows together. And when I sew these rows together, I'm going to put my seams in right here in the middle, and then I'll iron my seams out here and out here. That way, when I put the 3 rows together to complete the block, you'll be able to nest the corners of the star, and everything will line up very nicely. So let's start by putting our 3 rows together. So there is one point when you're sewing your block together that you want to pay attention to, and it is this point right here and this line here. you want them to match up as best as you can. So when you put this over the top to sew this seam, you can sew with this side on top, but I found it was a little bit easier to sew with the point or the square in the square section on top, just so you can keep an eye on the stitching. I don't know if you can see this, but there's stitching here. You want to land your needle just outside that stitching point, and I'll show you what I mean here. We will line up our fabrics, and I just kind of hold it there. Our point is pretty close to being perfect on this back side. You can put a pin in there if you would like, or you can just hold it. I'm not somebody who pins, and I'm not somebody who gets too worked up about all my points being perfect. It's just not part of the process for me. But we'll go ahead and we'll just sew down here, and then I kind of slow down right about here and give my presser foot a chance to come up over that seam, and I start sewing kind of slow right here, and you'll notice that I can see where that point of that seam meets, and I want to go just right to the outside of it. I don't want to cut off my point, but I want to be right on the outside of that. So I'm going to sew just to the outside of it, and we'll keep sewing down the side, and then we'll see how we did here. Pretty good. So we didn't cut off our point here, and it's lined up pretty closely with that line, which is where we want it, because this is going to make a point here, and then if you can flip it around here, you can kind of see the top of the star, and that's where the point of our star is. So we didn't cut that off either. So we did pretty good on that one. Here are our 3 rows, and we have our seams pressed in and out and out. So now we can take the rows and put them on top of each other, and you see how our seams are going to nest right in the corners there of that star, and that's going to make it really easy to line our block up. So we'll sew these rows together. Now you'll notice that there is another one of these seams right here where this line goes into this seam right here. So you will want to pay attention to that. Maybe put this middle on top when you're sewing this seam, so you can see that where those little points are, and get your seam allowance in the right place. And so let's put this block together, and then I'll show you how to do the corners of the block. So here's our block all done. And I wanted to show you, this isn't in the pattern, but if you want to just put your blocks together, be done, and this is what you want your block to look like, your quilt will turn out like this. It will have your star. Here's our block right here. It's kind of hard to see this pin on here, but you can see our block right here. And if you put them together, you will end up with this secondary pattern of a cross here, and you'll have nice, beautiful stars. But the pattern goes ahead and you will create a quilt top that looks like this. And what we're going to do now is, here is our block. Right here is a block. Well, my pen didn't want to work very well either. So here is one of our blocks in the quilt top. And we are going to have to add these corners here in order to get this secondary pattern. And what the corners do is it will create kind of a scalloped edge to the quilt that goes into the binding, and I think looks really pretty. And the other thing that those corners will do is it will create almost your crosses here, but it almost creates a floral pattern in between the blocks with the secondary pattern that the block creates just by adding these 4 corners. So in the pattern, it will tell you exactly how many of each block to make and where to put your corners and what color to fabric to put on each corner. But what we'll do now is we'll just go through the technique of putting the corner on. So we will take our block, and you're going to put a square piece of fabric on every corner, but it's just easier. We'll do one here. So here is our square. We're going to line it up with the edges of the corner, and we are going to sew from corner to corner on this square here. So let me do that, and I'll show you what we do next. Here's our stitching from corner to corner, and this is called the stitch and flip. And like I said, how to do all corners and how to do this technique is all in the pattern. So I am going to trim 1/4 of an inch seam allowance off of that seam that I just made. So we will discard that. And then all we're going to do is press this open. And that will give us back our corner of the block. And once we do that on all 4 corners, then we will have this type of a block, and then we'll put them all together in our quilt top and have a beautiful stars and scallops and floral quilt top. Here is the quilt top completed, one of our blocks, and you'll see that the scallops in the border are there. And I wanted to show you my quilting on this. I chose stars. I used an off-white thread, which I think sometimes it's kind of scary when you have dark and light and all sorts of different colors in a quilt top to choose a thread color. But I think that because there was light stars on this dark fabric, it just kind of really worked well to use that color. So that's the color thread I used, and the design obviously with the stars goes along with our quilt top. So that is this quilt, and I am so thankful that you came and watched and made this quilt top with me, and let me know what you think about the project when you get started. So here is our quilt block in a completely different fabric colorway, and I think it takes on a different look in these different colors, more of a fun and vibrant quilt pattern. And I also wanted to let you know, besides switching the colors really switches the look of this quilt, several months ago we did a pattern called Fussy Frames, and it featured Bible verse fabric. And I wanted to let you know that this quilt features a center square that will work with that fabric as well. So if you have that fabric and you're looking for another project, you can do Country Heavens and it will accommodate the Bible verse fabric as well. I loved having you to make Country Heavens quilt pattern with me. Thanks so much for joining. If you would like to keep up on all our new patterns and projects, kits, YouTube videos, just click the link and subscribe to our newsletter. We would love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel too, and we'll see you next time. Just click the link below. Click the link. I'm never going to get through this during these times. I just need to stop. For our I had 3 more words. YouTube channel. She would have you enjoy making this project for your loved ones too.